outrage erupts on social media as two white South Africans are charged after forcing a black man into a coffin. How will President-elect Donald Trump face the challenge of making good on campaign promises while uniting the country? And People magazine's choice for 2016's Sexiest Man Alive hints at a surprising career change. Africa 54 starts right now.
This is Africa 54. Good evening. I'm Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick, and I'm standing in for Vincent Makori, who is off this evening. In South Africa, two white men have appeared in court accused of forcing a black man into a coffin. The incident was recorded on video and circulated on social media. The men face charges of assault and kidnapping, and in the 20-second video, Victor Retabile Mochlochwa can be seen cowering inside the coffin as one man pushes a lid on his head. The other man is seen threatening to put a snake in the coffin and set it alight. The case has caused outrage in a country where racial tensions remain high, 22 years after the fall of apartheid. Demonstrators gathered outside the court on Wednesday to protest against racism. The accused, Willem Oosthuizen and Theo Martins Jackson, will appear in court again in January next year. They will remain in custody until then. DRC President Joseph Kabila is defying calls to step down when his term ends next month. Addressing Parliament Tuesday, Kabila vowed to defend his government against what he calls a violent overthrow. The DRC has been in a state of crisis since disputed elections in 2011, which returned Kabila to office for a second term. The country's constitution limits the presidency to just 2 terms, but last month the government and French opposition groups struck a controversial deal that effectively extends the president's term in office and delays elections until late next year. That deal was largely boycotted by leading opposition figures and has drawn much criticism. But Kabila says it is the only roadmap put in place by the Congolese people. Here in the United States, nearly 1,000 high school students from Washington, D.C. and surrounding areas walked out of their schools and marched across the city Tuesday in protest of President-elect Donald Trump. A human rights club at Woodrow Wilson High School informed students through social media and emailed parents with their intent to organize a walkout.
So when I spoke to my son and he brought this to me, his concerns was that he wanted to just make sure that he was standing united and that he didn't believe what Trump has professed.
Some students wore shirts which read, quote, "nasty woman," a reference to a comment Donald Trump made about his former competitor, Democrat Hillary Clinton. Though hundreds of these students could not vote, they wanted to make their opinions about the president-elect clear.
This is unity. We've been screaming unity since we've got here, but you know, we have to respond to the rhetoric in some way, and we cannot have a country where hate-filled rhetoric is socially acceptable. It's ridiculous.
Massive protests have been held across the United States almost on a daily basis since Trump's stunning election upset last Tuesday. But now activist groups are looking ahead to a march on the day after Trump is sworn in. Over 80,000 people have signed up on Facebook to take part in the Women's March on Washington on January 21st. In an interview that aired Sunday night, Trump said Americans have nothing to fear about his presidency. He wrote Friday on Twitter that he loves that there are small groups who have a passion for the country, and he predicted, quote, "We will all come together and be proud." In little more than 2 months, Donald Trump will be inaugurated as the 45th President of the United States. And one of his key challenges will be to make good on the campaign promises he made to his supporters while taking steps to heal the nation in the wake of a divisive personal campaign. VOA national correspondent Jim Malone has more from Washington.
The President-elect of the United States of America, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump's stunning election victory still seems like a dream to some of his supporters, and Trump quickly sounded a note of reconciliation in his victory speech.
I say it is time for us to come together as one united people.
Not my president! Not our president!
But Trump's victory has been marred by protests around the country. from Oregon and California in the west to his home city of New York and to Massachusetts in the east.
I get disappointed, but this one scares me.
There have also been post-election incidents of intimidation targeting minorities and Muslims, something Trump was asked about in a CBS 60 Minutes interview.
I am so saddened to hear that, and I say stop it.
Healing the political divide is also a concern for President Barack Obama.
And it's really important to try to send some signals of unity and to reach out to minority groups or women or others that were concerned about the tenor of the campaign.
The political unrest comes as Trump begins to name his incoming government, including Republican Party Chair Reince Priebus as his chief of staff, and Stephen Bannon, a highly controversial journalist with a strong right-wing following, as his top political advisor. Trump's first major test is staffing the government, says John Fortier.
But the process of staffing a government is a big one in America. And as an outsider candidate, he does not have the traditional connections, the traditional people that an administration would have.
But Trump's ability to encourage national healing has more to do with the tone of his rhetoric, says Molly Reynolds.
We have sort of the sense of Trump that we've seen on the campaign trail, and then we have a slightly more muted version of Trump that we've seen come out from time to time. And the question of whether that latter form, that sort of pivot that we often anticipated but never quite saw during the presidential campaign, will that come out when he gets to the White House? We just don't know.
Thank you. God bless you, everybody.
Trump is expected to announce members of his cabinet in the weeks ahead, and who he appoints will also underscore the tone he wants to set as the incoming president. Jim Malone, VOA News, Washington.
Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, Republican congressional leaders are promising bold action when Donald Trump becomes president next year. Democrats are already seething over one of the president-elect's first picks for his White House staff. VOA Senate correspondent Michael Bowman reports.
Student-led protests against President-elect Trump reached the Capitol, where Paul Ryan was nominated for another term as Speaker of the House of Representatives and reveled in his party's electoral fortunes.
Welcome to the dawn of a new, unified Republican government. Feels really good to say that, actually. This will be a government focused on turning President-elect Trump's victory into real progress for the American people. Our team is very excited, and we cannot wait to get to work.
Republicans want to lower taxes, end major portions of President Barack Obama's health care law, and to regulate the economy. They are relieved that Trump, not Democrat Hillary Clinton, will fill a Supreme Court vacancy.
We will quickly move forward once the nomination is made.
Democrats say Trump is off to a horrible start with the selection of Steve Bannon as his chief political advisor. Bannon runs a conservative website that trumpets white nationalist sentiment and rails against minorities.
This is someone who has expressed racist, sexist, anti-Semitic, anti-LGBT sentiments, and on and on and on. This is someone whose views do not belong in the White House.
As long as a champion of racial division is a step away from the Oval Office, it will be impossible to take Trump's efforts to heal the nation seriously.
Republicans say Trump is entitled to pick his team.
We had an election. The American people voted. The American people chose their next president.
Protests against Trump show no signs of easing for now.
I'm concerned about him building the wall. I'm concerned about what he's going to do to the Affordable Health Care Act. And I'm just concerned how our country is going to turn out for the next 4 years.
What's unknown for Republicans is whether Trump will feed or quell the polarizing furor that helped him on Election Day. That furor could distract from or impede a busy legislative agenda after his inauguration. Michael Bowman, VOA News, the Capitol.
Gabonese opposition leader and former presidential candidate Jean Ping is in Washington. Speaking to VOA's French to Africa service, Mr. Ping hailed the recent U.S. election, saying the process is admirable and expressed hope that what happened in the U.S. will also happen in Gabon.
Here in America is that the elections are proclaiming the winner, and it is accepted. In spite of some frustration, it is accepted. So what happened here, it is something which we hope that Gabon will happen also in Gabon, that the winner is proclaimed winner. You know, we are here also to celebrate the American democracy.
Well, the World Food Programme says more than 600,000 people are facing food shortages in Burundi due to drought and flooding, and it warns that that number could rise to 700,000 by next year. Tens of thousands of people have reportedly already fled their villages. Burundi has experienced a political crisis and witnessed sporadic violence for more than a year now. The crisis was sparked by President Pierre Nkurunziza's decision to run for a third term in office following a disputed election in July last year. Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. We're going to take a break right now. Coming up, a Tanzanian tribe turns to carbon offsets to protest ancestral forests. We'll be right back.
Health news and notes. This is Living Better.
When Irma Hendricks needed a kidney transplant, doctors told her to expect at least a 5-year wait. But then researchers offered her a chance at a quicker transplant if she could accept the risk of contracting hepatitis C, which doctors hoped could be cured, though they couldn't guarantee it.
The concept of getting a very good kidney with small traces of the virus and then getting treated for the virus that's curable, it just makes sense to me.
Dr. Peter Reese is with the University of Pennsylvania.
We're giving them the opportunity to have a transplant, but we're also treating them for a new infection that they didn't have.
New drugs may offer a cure for 95% of hepatitis C cases. If the groundbreaking research pans out, hundreds more kidneys from donors who have hepatitis C, and maybe hearts and lungs too, could be transplanted every year. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
Welcome back. It's been exactly 1 week since Donald Trump shocked the world with his surprise win of the U.S. presidency. For more on the trade and investment outlook between Africa and the United States, we're joined by Jill Malandrino, Africa 54's business correspondent in New York. Hello, Jill.
Hi there. So the medium to long-term impact of Trump's presidency will only become clear once the dust has settled over the coming months. Clearly, trade is one channel that concerns me, considering Trump's protectionist stance in this regard. Trade has declined between the U.S. and Africa in recent years, mainly due to a decline in U.S. imports from Africa because of the shale boom, which reduced the need for African crude oil. That said, a number of African countries benefit immensely from the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or the AGOA, perhaps one of President Obama's biggest legacies. And this inward-looking neo-nationalistic strategy Trump campaigned on holds direct implications for Africa, particularly as the U.S. held the second largest amount of foreign direct investment stock in Africa in 2014. That's according to the UN.
Now, considering what we've heard on the campaign trail, Jill, I would imagine what happens with China has to be closely monitored.
You're absolutely right. It's a tricky balance, as Trump has minced no words regarding his attitude towards China. And Africans, as we have discussed many times, they're skeptical of Chinese investment. U.S. policy towards China has to be monitored carefully moving forward due to the possible impact on demand for African minerals, investments from Beijing, Chinese loans for infrastructure development, and the likely impact on commodity prices.
Is it time to ring alarm bells?
You know what? I don't think so. You have to remember, campaign rhetoric is just that. It's rhetoric. Trump has already modified his stance on Obamacare and building the wall that the Mexicans were absolutely going to pay for. Also, the AGOA between the U.S. and the African countries that signed it remains legal. You just can't pull the plug overnight. Lesiba Mathada, he's a chief economist at Investment Solutions in South Africa, and I read this via the Global Times. He had an interesting thesis on this. Mathada believes that the BRICS will be unshaken by Trump's win, and its member states, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, that they may be more united. He's essentially saying that emerging markets will have a big share of global trade and a strong voice when put together. Markets have a tendency to overreact on emotion, and then they consolidate as they digest the reality. We're starting to see that in trade today. So we just have to let this transition play out as Trump tries to find his footing.
A lot of people digesting what has been going on the past week. Jill Malandrino, thank you very much for talking to us. And that was Jill Malandrino, Africa 54's business correspondent, speaking to us from New York. To Europe now, where President Barack Obama has stressed the importance of the peaceful transition of power in the United States. He addressed the people of Greece Wednesday in a speech focused largely on democracy. Obama spoke at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center in Athens. He said the recent U.S. presidential election sets a good example of a working democracy.
You may have noticed the next American president and I could not be more different. We have very different points of view, but American democracy is bigger than any one person. And that's why we have a tradition of the outgoing president welcoming the new one in, as I did last week, and why in the coming weeks my administration will do everything we can to support the smoothest transition possible, because that's how democracy has to work.
President Obama also reiterated U.S. support for Europe and its security in the face of concerns that a Donald Trump administration may usher in an era of isolationism. On Tuesday, Obama said NATO is absolutely vital and provides significant continuity even as we see a transition of government in the United States. Well, following up on issues raised by President-elect Trump and by previous U.S. administrations, including his own, Obama called on NATO members to spend more on defense. He had praise for Greece, and at a news conference with Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras, President Obama congratulated the country for spending more than the minimum goal on defense, even in difficult times. He said if Greece can meet its NATO commitment, quote, all our allies should be able to do so. Experts estimate the Hadzabe people have lived in the same area of northern Tanzania for more than 40,000 years. They are one of the world's last hunter-gatherer tribes, and they are fighting for survival. Since the 1960s, they've lost 90% of their land. But now the Hadzabe have turned to a decidedly modern invention, the global carbon trading market, to help them preserve the forests they call home. For VOA, Willie Lowry has the story from the Yaida Valley.
The Hadzabe still use the same kind of wooden bows and arrows their ancestors used. They live off the animals they hunt and what they forage from the forest.
Fruits like midabi, berries and toothbrush trees. That is a traditional of Hadzabe. Meat, roots and baobabs.
But it's becoming harder.
The environment is destroyed. It's not the same as we used to live before in those days. When we used to live with our parents, there used to be a lot of animals around. My old man used to roam for just a little while in the forest and come back with a big antelope.
Rival tribes have moved into the area, transforming the forests of the Yaida Valley into agricultural and grazing land. But now a local social enterprise is trying to help. Carbon Tanzania sells what are known as carbon offsets to local and international companies looking to reduce their carbon footprint. Scientists say an excess of greenhouse gases, like carbon dioxide, in the atmosphere due to the burning of fossil fuels is contributing to global warming. Trees naturally absorb carbon dioxide, thus mitigating the impact. The sale of carbon offsets pays Hadzabe forest rangers. Other proceeds are funneled back into the community.
What we're saying to companies and individuals is take the step to reduce your impact on the natural world by supporting the conservation of this natural habitat, which also supports the lifestyle, in this case, of a very special indigenous cultural group.
To date, the community has received roughly $150,000, which they spend on healthcare, education, and other community projects.
Carbon Tanzania told us to conserve and protect the forests, so no one cut down trees. There are benefits from carbon. We get T-shirts and money, which we use to buy some basic necessities.
Filippo hopes the Hadzabe will be able to continue their traditions for generations to come. Willie Lowry for VOA News in the Yaita Valley, Tanzania.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come here on Africa 54. It's that time of the year. People magazine announces its choice for 2016's Sexiest Man Alive. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Nigeria, at least 10 people were killed and several injured Monday when police opened fire during clashes with pro-Iranian Shiite outside northern Kano. We stay in Nigeria, where thousands of residents of a waterfront community in the commercial hub of Lagos marched to the office of the state governor to protest the demolition of their homes. In Morocco, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry joins talks at the UN Climate Change Conference in Marrakesh to land political impetus to a landmark climate deal. Finally, in Kenya, officials destroy a stockpile of more than 5,000 weapons in an effort to combat armed violence, community conflict, and poaching. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is People magazine's sexiest man alive. The Rock rose to mainstream fame in the mid-1990s as a contender in world wrestling entertainment. Later, he became an actor and Hollywood producer. In his latest project, he's featured in the upcoming Disney animated film Moana as the voice of demigod Maui. So what's next? Well, The Rock tells Reuters that the excitement surrounding last week's presidential election had renewed public interest in his running for office. That should be interesting. Next up, designer Erica Varga wants to raise the acceptance of the Roma minority in Hungarian society by building a special bridge in fashion. The designs are getting noticed not just in Hungary, but also in Brussels, Berlin, Paris, and India. Regular buyers of Romani fashion and fashion insiders of Roma descent hope to spread cultural awareness of the community, which has faced discrimination for centuries. And in other design news, Jaguar's first ever electric vehicle has been revealed with another first, a virtual reality experience. The I-Pace will be revealed next year and on the road in 2018. The 5-seat sports car SUV combo can go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 4 seconds. The battery can be fully charged in just over 2 hours, enough to cover 220 miles. But sorry for all you car buffs, no word yet from Jaguar about the price tag. That, of course, is what is trending today. Well, someone else also making some news. A Somali woman basketball coach and former player Suad Mohammed is encouraging Somali women to play basketball in defiance of orders of al-Shabaab Islamists who believe that Somali women should not play any sports. Ms. Mohammed is also ahead of a project called Empower Young Women Through Sports and Peace. She plans to create a new Somali women's basketball team inside Somalia, and we are lucky enough to have her in studio today. Suad Mohammed, welcome to Africa 54. Thank you so very much for joining us. This is very, very impressive, and we're so honored to have you here. Tell us about your plans to create a new women's basketball team inside Somalia. My first thought is, isn't that a bit dangerous?
Thank you for inviting me. I am glad to be here with you today. Not very dangerous, but it's a concern about playing basketball in Somalia in the last 25 years. And the reason we are doing the project right now, and we create to have a project and playing, we have young girls who love sports, basketball, track and field, soccer, handball, all kind of sports. And imagine that playing basketball when I was young in Somalia, when we have a peace and prosperity and system works for that time. Imagine that, a picture, I imagine that, and I think about it to be American, Somali American, being here 27 years old, see my kids are playing sports, my son and my daughter who plays in Fairfax High School and Chantilly High. What kind of contribute in Somali young girls who loves play basketball, just I was. And I see my daughter. And then I said, then I have to support them. And I know that was a very difficult time for them, which we never have a difficult time for us. In my generation, it was a great time and enjoy very well and became to play Somali national team. So I started looking for some information. How can I support them? Who should I talk to? Where should I start? Thanks to be American, I wrote a project and I sent many different places. And finally, 5 months ago, I got response. You can do your vision. We wanted to support you. It was a phone call from one of the international organizations. Can you come to Nairobi to meet us? We want you to meet you in person.
And so when your journey took off from there, how many women expressed interest?
Playing basketball?
Yes.
Many. They have been playing. It doesn't matter. We do have some documentary film when they are playing dark, when they are playing inside their house, when they are playing places. I used to play, but it wasn't safe. But they did not care because they love playing basketball.
We've got very little time. Just one question. Do you see playing basketball as a form of political dissent?
Absolutely. Because if you think about half of the society in this world is women, and the other half comes from a mother. They can make change in Somalia. The reason we are doing it's not only playing basketball, it's a lot of things comes with that. They're gonna go back their cities, their people, and talk about what they see. Many different Somali young girls are coming from different places and playing and going back. Then they will talk.
Thank you very, very much for being here in the studio with us. We wish you all the best of luck. Suad, thank you very much. Suad Mohammed is a women's basketball coach and a former basketball player. It was great to have her in the studio. And that is our show for today. Goodbye.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words. Here is a word that is often used in stories about military or foreign policy.
Strategy. For days, U.S. officials have talked about expanding airstrikes already happening in Iraq to Syria. It appears, however, that such action may be delayed, with President Obama on Thursday telling reporters he is still developing a strategy to deal with militants of the Islamic State, or ISIL.
A strategy is a plan to reach a major goal. It can relate to a military operation, a foreign policy, or even a business plan.
It takes time to complete. It is not about acting quickly. So the next time you hear the word strategy,
you will know what this news word means.